October 15th, 1988. Bedford, Indiana. The autumn silence that settled over Lawrence County that Saturday night would stretch into decades of unanswered questions. 22-year-old Jennifer Lynn Hayes hadn't come home from her Friday night out. Her roommate, 30-year-old Kelly Richardson, felt a cold dread settle in her stomach as she stared at Jennifer's untouched bed Saturday morning. Jennifer was responsible. She worked double shifts at the limestone quarry office. She called when she was running late. She never just disappeared. Calls to Jennifer's parents in Bloomington, to her sister in Indianapolis, to the few friends Kelly knew, all confirmed the same terrible truth. No one had heard from Jennifer since she left Murphy's bar around 11:30 p.m. Friday night. Kelly drove to Murphy's in tense silence, her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The sight of Jennifer's car, a red 1985 Honda Civic, still parked in Murphy's back lot, sparked a flicker of hope. Maybe she'd gotten a ride home with someone. Maybe she was sleeping it off at a friend's place. But hope died quickly. Jennifer's purse was still in the car. Her keys dangled from the ignition. Her jacket lay folded on the passenger seat. The driver's side door was slightly ajar, as if someone had gotten out in a hurry, or been pulled out. When Lawrence County Sheriff's deputies arrived, they found Jennifer's shoe, a white Reebok sneaker, lie on the gravel 20 feet from her car, pointing toward the dark woods that bordered the parking lot. Just one shoe. The scene was deeply wrong. 3 days later, on Tuesday, October 18th, two hunters stumbled upon Jennifer's body in a ravine off State Road 37, 12 miles south of Bedford. Jennifer Lynn Hayes, 22 years old, full of dreams about attending Indiana University, about becoming a teacher, about starting a family, lay partially buried beneath leaves and branches. She had been strangled, sexually assaulted, left like garbage in the Indiana wilderness. The initial theory, that Jennifer had wandered into the woods intoxicated and died from exposure, collapsed immediately when the medical examiner confirmed homicide. Someone else had been there. Someone who had grabbed her from that parking lot. Someone who had driven her south on State Road 37 and murdered her in those woods. Someone who left almost no evidence behind. For 36 years, the murder of Jennifer Lynn Hayes haunted Lawrence County, Indiana. One bright future extinguished too soon. One family searching for answers that never came. Until 2024, when DNA and genealogy finally revealed a truth more shocking than anyone imagined. Before we continue this devastating story, take a second to hit subscribe and like this video. Your support helps bring these forgotten stories to light, and the algorithm gods will make sure you don't miss any future uploads. Jennifer's death was not just a local tragedy. It was the first domino in a series of revelations that would expose dark secrets hidden beneath the surface of southern Indiana's limestone country. In 2024, after 36 years of silence, a cold case unit finally identified their suspect using cutting-edge DNA genealogy. It wasn't a drifter. It wasn't a stranger passing through on State Road 37. It was someone Jennifer knew, someone the community trusted, someone who had hidden in plain sight for nearly 4 decades. What this case reveals: the persistence of a sister who became a criminal justice advocate and never stopped fighting the power of familial DNA and genetic genealogy in solving decades-old cases, the devastating reality that Jennifer's killer attended her funeral and consoled her family, the complete failure of 1980s investigative techniques to catch an organized killer. Lawrence County, the limestone capital of America, was forever changed. Fear tore through Bedford like a cold October wind. Women stopped going to bars alone. Parents installed deadbolts. The parking lot at Murphy's bar, once packed every Friday night, became half empty as a community, withdrew into itself. The hidden predator among them remained free for 36 years, and when the truth finally emerged in 2024, it would shatter everything the community thought they knew. The most haunting fact: Jennifer's killer was interviewed in the original investigation. He expressed concern, offered to help with searches, and even attended her memorial service, where he hugged Jennifer's mother and told her, "I hope they catch whoever did this." For 36 years, he lived a normal life, raised a family, attended church, and never faced consequences, until genetic genealogy finally gave Jennifer a voice from beyond the grave. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. I'm always fascinated to see how far these stories travel and how they connect us across distances. Today we'll walk through the events of October 1988. We'll trace 36 years of failed leads, overlooked evidence, and devastating dead ends. We'll reveal the DNA breakthrough that finally identified Jennifer's killer and the shocking secret that provided his motive. This is a story of innocence destroyed, persistence rewarded, science triumphant, and ultimately, justice delayed but not denied. Lawrence County, Indiana in 1988 felt like a place where everyone knew everyone's business. With just over 42,000 people spread across towns like Bedford, Mitchell, and Oolitic, it was a community built on limestone, both literally and figuratively. The massive quarries that dotted the landscape provided jobs, stability, and pride. Bedford limestone had built the Empire State Building, the Pentagon, and countless other American landmarks. This was a world Jennifer Lynn Hayes grew up in, a young woman whose ambition and kindness stood out even in a community full of good people. Jennifer Lynn Hayes was born on March 12, 1966, to Robert and Catherine Hayes of Bloomington, Indiana. She was the younger of two daughters. Her sister Michelle was 4 years older. The Hayes family moved to Bedford when Jennifer was 6, after Robert got a management position at one of the limestone mills. They settled into a modest house on 16th Street, quickly becoming part of the tight-knit community. Jennifer was a standout student at Bedford North Lawrence High School. She played clarinet in the marching band, served as secretary of the student council, and graduated in 1984 with a 3.8 GPA. Jennifer's dreams. That girl was going places. Her high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Patricia Donnelly, would later recall. She wanted to be a teacher. She talked about getting her master's degree and coming back to teach right here in Bedford. She wanted to make a difference. But college was expensive, and the Hayes family didn't have much money. Jennifer made a practical decision. She'd work for a few years, save money, and then attend Indiana University in Bloomington. Physical description. Jennifer was striking, 5'7" with long auburn hair, green eyes, and a smile that lit up rooms. Her natural beauty attracted attention, which sometimes made her uncomfortable. She wasn't stuck up, her friend Kelly Richardson later said. She was actually kind of shy about her looks. She'd downplay it, wear her hair in a ponytail, dress casual. She didn't realize how beautiful she really was. After graduation, Jennifer landed an office job at Hoosier Limestone Company, one of the largest quarries in the region. She was efficient, detail-oriented, and well-liked by her co-workers. In 1986, she moved into a small apartment on Lincoln Avenue with Kelly Richardson, a secretary at the local hospital. The two women became close friends, more like sisters and roommates. We'd stay up late watching Johnny Carson, talking about our futures, Kelly remembered. Jennifer was saving every penny. She had her IU acceptance letter pinned to our fridge. She was going to start in the fall of 1989. She'd been accepted into their education program. Jennifer's life was carefully planned. She worked 40 hours a week, picked up overtime when available, and lived frugally. By October 1988, she had saved nearly $8,000, enough for her first year tuition and expenses. She was just 11 months away from starting her dream. Jennifer had been dating a man named Derek Mitchell for about 6 months in 1988. Derek was 25, worked at one of the other quarries, and was, by most accounts, devoted to Jennifer. He was crazy about her, Kelly said. He wanted to get serious, maybe even get engaged. But Jennifer kept putting him off. She liked him, but she wasn't ready to settle down. She had plans, college, a career. Derek didn't always understand that. They'd had arguments about it. Derek wanted Jennifer to forget college, marry him, start a family. Jennifer wanted to pursue her education first. In late September 1988, they had a particularly bad fight. Derek had given her an ultimatum. Commit to him or break up. Jennifer chose to break up. Derek took it hard. He called constantly, showed up at her apartment, sent flowers to her work. Jennifer felt uncomfortable but not threatened. He's just hurt, she told Kelly. He'll get over it. But some people who knew Derek wondered if he would. There was someone else in Jennifer's life, someone she'd never identified by name, Starting in August 1988, Jennifer began receiving anonymous gifts at work. Flowers, chocolate, cards with poetry. The messages were romantic but intense, bordering on obsessive. To the most beautiful woman in Bedford, one card read, "I watch you every day and dream of when I can tell you how I feel." Jennifer showed the cards to Kelly, half flattered, half disturbed. "It's probably someone from work," she said. "But I wish they'd just tell me who they are instead of being creepy about it." She never found out who was sending them. The gift stopped in early October, just 2 weeks before her murder. Looking back, Kelly wondered if the timing was significant. Had the anonymous admirer been preparing to approach Jennifer? Had something happened to escalate the situation? The week before her death, Jennifer was in high spirits. She'd just received her official schedule for IU's spring 1989 semester. She'd registered for Introduction to Education, English Composition, Psychology 101, and U.S. History. She couldn't stop talking about it. Kelly remembered. She'd been waiting 4 years for this. She was finally going to be a student again. On Thursday, October 13th, Jennifer called her mother, Catherine, with excitement in her voice. "I'm really doing this, Mom. I'm going to be a teacher." Catherine Hayes, speaking through tears years later, said, "That was the last real conversation I had with my daughter. The last time I heard her voice full of joy." Friday, October 14th, 1988, started like any other Friday. Jennifer worked her shift at Hoosier Limestone until 5 p.m., came home, ate dinner with Kelly, leftover pizza, and Diet Coke. Around 8:30 p.m., Jennifer's friend Lisa Campbell called. A group was going to Murphy's Bar, a popular spot on the west side of Bedford. Did Jennifer want to come? Jennifer hesitated. She had to work Saturday morning. But it had been a long week, and she deserved some fun. "I'll go for a couple hours," she told Kelly. "I'll be home by midnight." She changed into jeans and a white sweater, pulled on her Reebok sneakers, grabbed her denim jacket, and headed out. Kelly watched from the window as Jennifer got into her red Honda and backed out of the driveway, waving as she left. It was the last time Kelly would see her friend alive. The night of Friday, October 14th, 1988, Murphy's Bar was packed with the usual Bedford crowd. Jennifer arrived around 9:15 p.m. and found her friends, Lisa Campbell, Tom Bradford, and Sarah Matthews, at a table near the back. They ordered drinks, played pool, and talked over loud music from the jukebox. The atmosphere, Murphy's was the kind of place where everybody knew everybody. Located on State Road 37 on the western edge of Bedford, it was a limestone workers' bar. Nothing fancy, just cold beer, cheap whiskey, and a pool table that had seen better days. According to multiple witnesses, Jennifer seemed happy that night. She danced, laughed, and nursed 2 beers over 3 hours. Around 10:45 p.m., Derek Mitchell showed up. Several witnesses reported that Derek approached Jennifer, asked to talk to her outside. Jennifer declined. Derek persisted. Jennifer finally agreed, probably hoping to avoid a scene. They went outside to the parking lot. Witnesses saw them talking. Derek gesturing emotionally, Jennifer with her arms crossed. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes. Then Jennifer walked back inside alone, rejoining her friends. She looked upset. Lisa Campbell later testified. "I asked if she was okay. She said Derek was having a hard time with the breakup, but she'd made it clear they were done." Derek left the parking lot in his truck around 11:05 p.m., a detail that would later prove crucial. Around 11:20 p.m., Jennifer announced she was heading home. She had to work in the morning, and she was tired. Her friends offered to wait and walk out with her, but Jennifer waved them off. "I'm parked right out back. I'll be fine. See you guys next week." Lisa watched Jennifer weave through the Friday night crowd toward the back exit. The back parking lot at Murphy's was poorly lit. Just 2 weak overhead lights that barely illuminated the gravel lot where about 20 cars were parked. The lot bordered a stretch of woods that ran along an old railroad track. Multiple witnesses placed Jennifer walking to her car around 11:30 p.m. One man, James Morrison, was leaving Murphy's at the same time and later testified that he saw Jennifer unlock her Honda, open the driver's side door, and get in. "She seemed fine," Morrison said. "Not scared, not rushing. Just a normal person heading home." Morrison got in his own car, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot onto State Road 37. He was possibly the last person to see Jennifer Lynn Hayes alive. What happened in the next few minutes remained a mystery for 36 years. Jennifer's car never left the parking lot. At some point between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, she either got out of her car again or was pulled out. The driver's side door was found slightly ajar. Her purse was on the passenger seat, her keys in the ignition, her jacket folded neatly in the seat. One white Reebok sneaker lay in the gravel 20 feet away, as if it had fallen off during a struggle or a sprint. Someone had taken Jennifer into those dark woods, and 12 miles south on State Road 37, they had ended her life. The unnatural silence from Jennifer's apartment continued through Saturday morning, October 15th. The first alarm, when Jennifer didn't show up for her 8 a.m. shift at Hoosier Limestone Company, her supervisor, Frank Peterson, was surprised. Jennifer was never late, never called in sick without advance notice. Peterson called the apartment. Kelly Richardson answered, her voice immediately worried. She never came home last night, Kelly said. I thought maybe she'd stayed with a friend, but her bed hasn't been touched. Peterson felt a cold knot form in his stomach. That's not like Jennifer. Kelly hung up and immediately started making calls to Jennifer's parents, to her sister Michelle, to Lisa Campbell. The news spread quickly. Jennifer Hayes was missing. By noon, Kelly and Lisa drove to Murphy's Bar. The sight that greeted them made Kelly's blood run cold. Jennifer's red Honda Civic sat alone in the back parking lot, exactly where she'd parked it the night before. Kelly ran to the car, peered inside. Everything was there: purse, keys, jacket. Nothing seemed disturbed except the driver's door was slightly open, and 20 feet away, lying in the gravel, was Jennifer's white sneaker. Something bad happened, Kelly told Lisa, her voice shaking. We need to call the police. Now! Lawrence County Sheriff's deputies arrived within minutes. Detective Raymond Cole, a 15-year veteran, took charge of the scene. What struck Cole immediately was the staging, or lack thereof. This doesn't look like a robbery, he told his partner. Her purse is right there, wallet inside with cash. This looks like an abduction. Deputies canvassed Murphy's Bar, interviewing everyone who'd been there Friday night. The story that emerged was consistent. Jennifer had left around 11:30 p.m., appeared sober and capable, walked her car alone. But then nothing. Search dogs were brought in. They tracked Jennifer's scent from her car into the woods, following it about 50 yards to the old railroad tracks. Then the trail went cold, suggesting Jennifer had either been put into a vehicle on the tracks, or the scent was disrupted by the gravel and old train ties. We've got an abduction, Detective Cole announced to the growing crowd of volunteers. We're treating this as a critical missing persons case. For 3 days, hundreds of volunteers searched the woods around Murphy's Bar. They walked in grid patterns, checked abandoned buildings, dragged ponds. Jennifer's parents, Robert and Catherine Hayes, arrived from Bloomington, their faces masks of terror. Her sister Michelle took time off from her job in Indianapolis to help coordinate searches. The community rallied, but Jennifer remained missing. On Tuesday, October 18, 1988, brothers Michael and Stephen Perry were hunting deer in the woods off State Road 37, about 12 miles south of Bedford. Around 2:30 p.m., Michael Perry noticed something white partially buried under leaves of a ravine. He walked closer. It was a hand. "Stephen," Michael shouted. "Get over here. Call 911. Lawrence County Sheriff's deputies, Indiana State Police, and forensic teams descended on the scene. What they found devastated everyone who had spent 3 days hoping for Jennifer's safe return. Jennifer Lynn Hayes lay in a shallow depression, partially covered with leaves and branches. She was still wearing her jeans and white sweater, though her clothing was disturbed, suggesting sexual assault. The ligature marks around her neck told the story of her final moments. She had been strangled, likely with a rope or cord. Her second Reebok sneaker was found nearby, as if she'd kicked it off during a struggle. Most disturbingly, she had defensive wounds on her hands and arms. Jennifer had fought back. The medical examiner later determined she'd been dead for approximately 3 to 4 days, placing her time of death very close to when she disappeared. likely within hours of leaving Murphy's bar. Initially, the grim thought among investigators was that Derek Mitchell had followed Jennifer from Murphy's and killed her in a fit of jealous rage. It was a common, if tragic, explanation for such violence. The ex-boyfriend who couldn't let go. But that theory fell apart quickly when Derek's alibi checked out. Time of death. The medical examiner, Dr. Richard Brennan, estimated Jennifer died between 11:30 p.m. Friday and 3 a.m. Saturday. The cause of death was ligature strangulation. She had been sexually assaulted either just before or just after death. Physical evidence. Despite the violence of the crime, the killer had been careful. There were no fingerprints on Jennifer's car or belongings. The rope or cord used to strangle her was never found. And most frustratingly, this was 1988, before routine DNA collection from rape kits. Dr. Brennan did collect biological evidence using the standard rape kit protocol, but DNA analysis was in its infancy. The samples were preserved but not immediately tested. The crime scene, the location where Jennifer was found, 12 miles south of Murphy's bar, hidden in woods off a Tulane highway, suggested the killer knew the area well. This wasn't a random spot. The ravine was accessed by a narrow logging road that locals used but outsiders would never find. Jennifer's car. Forensic teams examined every inch of Jennifer's Honda. They found her fingerprints, Kelly's fingerprints, and several unidentified prints. But prints on a frequently used car were nearly impossible to narrow down. What they didn't find was more telling. No signs of a struggle inside the car, no blood, no hair beyond Jennifer's own. The theory emerged. Jennifer had gotten into her car, but before she could leave, someone had approached her. Either someone she knew, so she opened the door willingly, or someone who pulled her out forcibly. The single shoe in the parking lot suggested force. Bedford, a town that always felt safe, was gripped by fear. "We've never had anything like this," Mayor Thomas Reeves told reporters. "This is a community where people look out for each other. The idea that someone among us could do this, it's unthinkable." Murphy's bar saw its business drop by half. Women refused to go out alone at night. Parents enforced strict curfews. Local newspapers ran daily updates, keeping Jennifer's case on the front page for weeks. Her high school graduation photo appeared again and again, that bright smile, full of promise, now heartbreakingly gone. Red herring number 1, Derek Mitchell. Derek Mitchell, Jennifer's ex-boyfriend, was the obvious first suspect. He had motive, jealousy, rejection, anger over their breakup. He had been at Murphy's bar that night. He'd argued with Jennifer just an hour before she disappeared. Detective Cole brought Derek in for questioning on October 19th, the day after Jennifer's body was found. Derek was cooperative but emotionally devastated. "I loved her," he said through tears. "I would never hurt her. Never." "You argued with her Friday night," Cole pressed. "Witnesses say you were angry." "I was upset, yeah, but I left. I went home. I couldn't." Derek's timeline. He claimed he left Murphy's around 11:05 p.m., drove directly home to his apartment on the east side of Bedford, a 15-minute drive, and went to bed. His roommate, Kevin Walsh, confirmed Derek arrived home around 11:20 p.m. They watched the end of the Colts game together until midnight. Then both went to bed. "Derek was here all night," Walsh testified. "I'm a light sleeper. I would have heard if he left." Investigators tried to poke holes in the alibi. Could Walsh be lying to protect his friend? Could Derek have sneaked out? But the timeline didn't work. If Derek had arrived home at 11:20 p.m. and Jennifer disappeared around 11:30 p.m., Derek couldn't have driven back to Murphy's, abducted Jennifer, driven her 12 miles south, killed her, and returned home without Walsh noticing. Derek also voluntarily took a polygraph test. He passed. The most promising early lead had evaporated. Derek Mitchell was eliminated as a suspect. Red herring number 2, the transit worker. In late October 1988, a new tip led investigators in a different direction. A limestone worker named Carl Jensen reported seeing a suspicious man lurking near Murphy's bar earlier that Friday evening, around 7:30 p.m. He was just watching people, Jensen told police, standing by the tree line, smoking cigarettes, staring at folks going in and out. I got a bad vibe from him. Jensen described the man as white, 30s, wearing a faded denim jacket and work boots. He had dark hair, a beard, and looked like a drifter. This description matched a man named Robert Bobby Carlisle, a transient worker who'd been hired for temporary jobs at various limestone quarries. Carlisle had a criminal record: assault, theft, drunk, and disorderly. Investigators tracked Carlisle to a boarding house in Mitchell, Indiana. They brought him in for questioning. Carlisle was evasive, hostile, and had no solid alibi for Friday night. "I was at Murphy's earlier in the evening," he admitted. "I had a few beers, then I left, went for a walk, ended up sleeping in my car." "Anyone see you?" Detective Cole asked. "No, I was alone." Without physical evidence linking Carlisle to Jennifer, investigators had nothing to hold him on. They had to let him go. For months, Carlisle remained a person of interest. Investigators followed him, hoping he'd lead to evidence or make a mistake. He never did. Eventually, Carlisle left Indiana, drifting to Kentucky, then Tennessee. The trail went cold. Years later, after Carlisle died in 2003, his DNA was obtained from stored medical samples and compared to the evidence from Jennifer's case. No match. Bobby Carlisle wasn't Jennifer's killer. Red herring number 3, the mysterious admirer. Investigators became fixated on the anonymous gifts Jennifer had received in the months before her death. Who had been sending her flowers and poetry? Could this obsessed admirer have escalated to violence when Jennifer didn't respond? Detective Cole and his team interviewed every male employee at Hoosier Limestone Company. Over 40 men. They asked about the gifts, about their relationships with Jennifer, about their whereabouts Friday night. Most had alibis. A few didn't, but none struck investigators as particularly suspicious. The florist who delivered the arrangements was interviewed. The flowers had been ordered by phone, paid for with cash that was dropped off at the shop. The florist had never seen who placed the orders, just heard a male voice on the phone. Did he sound young or old? Cole asked. Hard to say. Middle-aged, maybe? Normal voice. Nothing distinctive. The handwriting on the cards was analyzed but yielded no matches to known samples. The mysterious admirer remained just that, mysterious. Without a name or face, the lead went nowhere. One by one, the leads dried up. The investigation stalled. The files on Jennifer Lynn Hayes were closed and consigned to boxes in the Lawrence County Sheriff's evidence room. For Detective Raymond Cole, who retired in 1997, the unsolved murder became his greatest regret. "I think about that girl every single day," he said in a 2005 interview. "That bright smile, all that potential, just gone. And I couldn't find who did it. That failure weighs on you." Years passed. Bedford moved forward, though Jennifer's murder remained a dark shadow over the community. For Jennifer's family, however, time didn't heal. It only deepened the wound. Her mother, Catherine Hayes, fell into depression. She couldn't enter Jennifer's old bedroom, which remained exactly as Jennifer had left it. IU acceptance letters still pinned to the bulletin board. Clothes still in the closet. Robert Hayes threw himself into work, rarely speaking about his daughter. The pain was too great. But Jennifer's sister, Michelle, refused to let the case die. Michelle Hayes, who had been 26 when Jennifer was murdered, made it her life's mission to find her sister's killer. She earned a degree in criminal justice in 1992. She became a victim's advocate, working with families of unsolved murder victims across Indiana. She lobbied for cold case units, for better funding for forensic labs, for law enforcement training in modern investigative techniques. "My sister's case could have been solved," Michelle told a legislative committee in 2001. "But we didn't have the tools in 1988. Now we do. We have DNA analysis. We have criminal databases. We have the technology, but only if we use it." She filed Freedom of Information requests for Jennifer's case file every single year. She pestered new sheriffs, new detectives, anyone who might reopen the case. Most importantly, she kept Jennifer's story alive. She created a website, Justice for Jennifer Lynn Hayes. She spoke at true crime podcasts. She contacted cold case shows on television. "I will not let my sister be forgotten," Michelle said in a 2015 interview. Someone out there knows what happened. Someone is carrying the secret. And one day, science will reveal the truth. She was right, though it would take until 2024. By the early 2020s, Lawrence County was a different place. The limestone industry had declined. Bedford's population had shrunk. The original investigators had all retired or passed away. But new technologies offered new possibilities, specifically forensic genetic genealogy. This technique, which gained fame in 2018 with the capture of the Golden State Killer, uses DNA from crime scenes to build family trees, identifying suspects through distant relatives who've uploaded their DNA to public genealogy databases. It was this technology that would finally give Jennifer Hayes a voice. In 2022, Indiana State Police established a dedicated cold case unit, specifically focused on unsolved homicides from the 1980s and 1990s, cases that predated modern DNA databases. The unit was led by Detective Lieutenant Sarah Walsh, a 20-year veteran who'd made a name for herself solving cold cases using genetic genealogy. Walsh assembled a team: Detective Marcus Johnson, retired FBI profiler Dr. Patricia Reynolds, and genetic genealogist Cece Moore, who'd worked on dozens of high-profile cold cases. Their methodology was simple but time-consuming. Identify cases with preserved DNA evidence, extract and sequence the DNA using modern techniques, upload the DNA profile to genealogy databases, build family trees. To identify potential suspects, verify suspects through traditional investigation. Jennifer Lynn Hayes' case was one of the first they selected. The rape kit from Jennifer's 1988 murder had been stored in a climate-controlled evidence facility for 34 years. The biological samples were degraded but potentially salvageable. In March 2023, the samples were sent to Othram Labs in Texas, a cutting-edge forensic laboratory specializing in extracting DNA from challenging samples. Othram scientists use advanced techniques to extract enough male DNA for sequencing. In May 2023, they produced a full genetic profile. The profile was uploaded to GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, public databases where millions of people have voluntarily submitted their DNA for genealogy research. Then came the painstaking work of building family trees. Cece Moore and her team began analyzing the DNA matches. The suspect's DNA matched dozens of distant cousins, people who shared great-great-great-grandparents with the killer. Using birth records, marriage certificates, obituaries, and census data, Moore built a family tree backward through time, identifying common ancestors. This process took 8 months. By January 2024, Moore had narrowed the suspect pool to a single-family lineage, descendants of William and Martha Garrett, who'd settled in Lawrence County, Indiana, in the 1880s. Through this lineage, Moore identified 12 living males in the Bedford area who were the right age in 1988. And one name jumped out: James Robert Thornton. James Robert Thornton, known as Jim to friends and family, had lived in Bedford his entire life. In 1988, he'd been 32 years old, married, with 2 young children. He'd worked as a foreman at one of the limestone quarries, the same industry where Jennifer worked. But here's what made investigators' blood run cold. Jim Thornton had known Jennifer Hayes. They'd worked at neighboring quarry operations. They'd attended some of the same industry meetings. They'd been friendly acquaintances. And Jim Thornton had been at Murphy's Bar the night Jennifer disappeared. Detective Walsh's team dove into Thornton's background. In 1988, Thornton had been interviewed as part of the original investigation, along with dozens of other people who'd been at Murphy's that night. He'd told Detective Cole that he'd been there until around 11 p.m., then drove home to his wife and kids. His wife, Nancy Thornton, had corroborated this. Jim came home around 11:15 p.m., she told police. We watched TV for a while, then went to bed. The alibi had seemed solid. Thornton had been eliminated as a suspect. But now, 36 years later, Detective Walsh wanted to re-examine that alibi. She tracked down Nancy Thornton, now divorced from Jim and living in Bloomington. The interview that followed would crack the case wide open. In February 2024, Detective Walsh and Detective Johnson drove to Bloomington to interview Nancy Thornton, now 70 years old. Nancy was initially reluctant to talk. "That was a long time ago," she said. "I don't remember much about that night." "Mrs. Thornton," Walsh said gently, "we have DNA evidence that suggests your ex-husband may have been involved in Jennifer Hayes' murder. We need to know the truth about that night." Nancy's face went pale. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, "I always wondered if he did it." Nancy explained that Jim had come home later than 11:15 p.m., more like 12:30 a.m. "He told me to lie to the police," she said. "He said if I told him he was out late, they'd think he was involved, even though he wasn't." Nancy had been scared. They had 2 small children. Jim had an explosive temper. So she lied. But there was more, and this was about 2 weeks after Jennifer was found. Nancy said, her voice shaking. "I was doing laundry, and I found Jim's clothes from that Friday night stuffed in the back of the garage. They smelled like they'd been washed with bleach. The knees of his jeans were stained with red clay, the kind in the woods where they found her." Nancy had confronted Jim. "What's this about?" she'd asked. Jim's response had been chilling. "I got in a fight with some guys at the bar. Things got rough. I didn't want to worry you." Nancy didn't entirely believe him, but she didn't push. "I was afraid of what I might find out," she admitted to detectives. After their divorce in 1995, for unrelated reasons, Jim's drinking and infidelity, Nancy had tried to forget that night, but the suspicion had always lingered. Armed with this new information, Detective Walsh's team dug deeper into Jim Thornton's life. What they discovered painted a picture of a man with dark secrets. Prior accusations. In 1992, for years after Jennifer's murder, a woman named Brenda Wilson filed a police report claiming Thornton had sexually assaulted her after a party. The case was investigated but never prosecuted due to lack of evidence. Wilson had since died, but the report was still on file. Domestic violence. Thornton had been arrested twice for domestic battery. Once during his marriage to Nancy, charges dropped, and once in a relationship after his divorce, he pleaded guilty to misdemeanor battery. Obsessive behavior. Multiple women who'd known Thornton described him as intense and possessive. One former co-worker said he'd asked her out repeatedly, becoming angry when she refused. Connection to Jennifer. Most significantly, investigators discovered that Thornton had been the person sending Jennifer those anonymous gifts in the months before her death. This came from Margaret Willis, who'd been Thornton's secretary at the quarry in 1988. He was obsessed with Jennifer Hayes, Margaret told detectives in March 2024. He talked about her constantly. How beautiful she was. How she was too good for Derek Mitchell. How he wanted to ask her out, but didn't know how. Margaret remembered Thornton ordering flowers and having her mail them to Jennifer's workplace. "He swore me to secrecy," she said. "He didn't want anyone to know. He said he wanted to surprise her." When investigators asked why Margaret hadn't come forward in 1988, she had a simple answer: "I was scared. Jim was my boss. And I thought the flowers were harmless. Creepy, sure, but not dangerous." It wasn't until Jennifer was found dead that I realized how wrong I was. By then, I was terrified he'd come after me if I talked. To Detective Walsh, the puzzle slammed into place. Jim Thornton had been infatuated with Jennifer Hayes. He'd been sending her anonymous gifts, working up the courage to reveal himself. But Jennifer, focused on her future and her plans for college, had never responded to his advances. On October 14, 1988, Thornton had been at Murphy's bar. He'd seen Jennifer with her friends, laughing, full of life. Maybe he'd watched Derek Mitchell argue with her. Maybe he'd seen his opportunity. When Jennifer left alone around 11:30 p.m., Thornton had followed her to the parking lot. What happened next was speculation, but the evidence suggested Thornton had approached Jennifer's car, maybe offering to help with something or claiming he needed to talk to her about work. Jennifer, knowing Thornton professionally, might have opened her door. Then Thornton had attacked. The struggle explained the lost shoe. He'd overpowered her, put her in his vehicle, driven her 12 miles south to woods he knew well, assaulted her, and strangled her. He'd cleaned his vehicle, bleached his clothes, and constructed an alibi with his wife's coerced help. For 36 years, he'd hidden his crime. But now DNA didn't lie. In April 2024, Detective Walsh and her team had enough evidence to make an arrest. But first, they wanted to confront Thornton, give him a chance to confess, to explain, to provide closure to Jennifer's family. On April 15th, 2024, they knocked on the door of Thornton's house in Bedford. Jim Thornton, now 70 years old, answered the door. He was gray-haired, heavy-set, wearing reading glasses and a puzzled expression. "Jim Thornton?" Detective Walsh asked. "Yeah, that's me. What's this about?" "We need to talk to you about Jennifer Lynn Hayes." For just a moment, Thornton's mask slipped. His face went pale. His hand gripped the doorframe. Then he recovered. "That was a long time ago. I don't know anything about that. Mr. Thornton, we have DNA evidence linking you to Jennifer's murder. We'd like you to come to the station with us." Thornton's response was immediate and visceral. "I want a lawyer." Jim Thornton was arrested on April 15th, 2024, and charged with murder, kidnapping, and criminal confinement. The news sent shockwaves through Bedford. "Jim Thornton?" Neighbors said in disbelief. "He's lived here forever. He goes to church. He volunteers at the food bank. This can't be right." But the DNA evidence was irrefutable. As investigators continued building their case for trial, a stunning revelation emerged, one that would provide the final piece of the motive puzzle. In June 2024, Detective Walsh received a call from Dr. Richard Brennan, the now-retired medical examiner who performed Jennifer's autopsy in 1988. "I've been following the case," Dr. Brennan said, "and there's something I need to tell you. Something I didn't put in the official report because the family asked me not to." What Dr. Brennan revealed was Jennifer Lynn Hayes had been pregnant when she died, approximately 8 to 10 weeks pregnant. The revelation was stunning. Jennifer's family had known. Catherine Hayes had learned this from Dr. Brennan right after the autopsy, but they'd asked him to keep it private. They wanted to protect Jennifer's reputation. Dr. Brennan explained. This was 1988, small-town Indiana. They were devastated enough without people gossiping about their daughter. But now, with a suspect in custody, the information was relevant. Who was the father? Detective Walsh requested that the fetal tissue samples that had been preserved from Jennifer's autopsy be tested. In August 2024, Othram Lab provided the results. The fetal DNA showed that Jim Thornton was the biological father of Jennifer's unborn child. This changed everything. Investigators now believe they understood the full story. At some point in August or September 1988, Jennifer and Jim Thornton had a brief sexual encounter. Possibly consensual, possibly not. Jennifer may have been coerced, intimidated, or assaulted by her boss's colleague. When Jennifer discovered she was pregnant in late September, she likely confronted Thornton. As a married man with children, this would have been devastating. Potentially career-ending, marriage-ending, reputation-destroying. Investigators theorize that Jennifer had told Thornton about the pregnancy on October 14th, possibly at Murphy's Bar or in a phone call earlier that day. Jennifer, focused on attending IU and becoming a teacher, may have told Thornton she planned to handle the pregnancy quietly, perhaps through abortion or adoption, but that she needed a support or at least a silence. But Thornton saw only disaster. His carefully constructed life, his marriage, his job, his reputation, would all crumble if anyone learned he'd gotten Jennifer Hayes pregnant. So he made a monstrous decision. Eliminate the problem by eliminating Jennifer. He followed her from Murphy's Bar, abducted her, drove her to the remote woods, and murdered her, along with his unborn child. For 36 years, he'd kept this secret. The trial of James Robert Thornton began in October 2024 at the Lawrence County Courthouse in Bedford. The prosecution was led by prosecuting attorney Daniel Morrison with assistance from Deputy Prosecutor Rachel Green. They presented a comprehensive case built on 3 pillars. DNA evidence. The biological evidence from the rape kit matched Thornton. The fetal DNA proved he was the father of Jennifer's unborn child. Witness testimony. Nancy Thornton testified about the false alibi, the bleached clothes, the red clay on his jeans. Margaret Willis testified about Thornton's obsession with Jennifer and the anonymous gifts. Motive. The pregnancy gave Thornton every reason to want Jennifer dead. Over 4 weeks, the prosecution painted a picture of a predatory man who became obsessed with a young woman, gotten her pregnant, and killed her to protect his secret. C.C. Moore explained to the jury how genetic genealogy had identified Thornton. We built a family tree from DNA. Science doesn't lie. The man who assaulted and murdered Jennifer Hayes is sitting in this courtroom. Dr. Brennan testified about the pregnancy, apologizing to Jennifer's family for keeping it secret for so long. I thought I was protecting them, he said, but I should have trusted that the truth would matter when justice finally came. Most powerfully, Michelle Hayes, Jennifer's sister, now 62 years old, took the stand. My sister was brilliant, Michelle said, tears streaming down her face. She was going to be a teacher. She was going to change lives. And this man, this coward, took all of that from her, took her life, took her dreams, took her unborn child. For 36 years, he's been free while my sister has been in the ground. Throughout the trial, Thornton sat stone-faced, whispering occasionally to his attorneys. But when Nancy Thornton testified about the night of the murder, describing his late arrival, the bleached clothes, his threats if she talked to police, Thornton's composure finally cracked. He stood up, pointing at Nancy. You lying bitch, he shouted. You're trying to destroy me. Judge Thomas Mitchell pounded his gavel. Mr. Thornton, sit down immediately. Bailiffs restrained Thornton, who continued shouting. This is all lies. I didn't kill her. The DNA is wrong. This is a conspiracy. He was removed from the courtroom. The trial continued in his absence for the remainder of that day. Thornton's defense team, led by veteran attorney Harold Chapman, faced an impossible task. Chapman tried to attack the DNA evidence, bringing in experts to suggest contamination or degradation over 36 years. But the science was solid. He tried to suggest that Jennifer's pregnancy meant she'd had multiple sexual partners, implying someone else might have been the father and the killer. But the DNA proved Thornton was the father. In a final desperate move, Chapman suggested that the sexual encounter between Thornton and Jennifer had been consensual, and that Jennifer's murder had been committed by someone else entirely, a random attacker who'd happened upon her in the Murphy's Bar parking lot. Ladies and gentlemen, Chapman told the jury, the prosecution wants you to believe that James Thornton is a monster, but having a consensual affair with a co-worker does not make him a murderer. Where's the evidence that he was in those woods? Where's the evidence he strangled her? Prosecutor Morrison destroyed this argument in his rebuttal. The defendant wants you to believe that it's mere coincidence that the father of Jennifer's unborn child, a married man with everything to lose, just happened to be innocent, while some mysterious stranger killed her the very night he was at the same bar, the very night she disappeared. That's not reasonable doubt. That's fantasy. Against his attorney's advice, Thornton insisted on testifying. It was a disaster. Thornton admitted to the affair with Jennifer. Yes, we had a relationship, he said. It was wrong. I was married, but I cared about Jennifer. Did you know she was pregnant? Morrison asked. Thornton hesitated. She told me a few days before she died. How did you feel about that? I was scared, but I wanted to help her. I would have supported her decision, whatever it was. So, why didn't you come forward when she was murdered? Why didn't you tell police you'd been having an affair with the victim, and she was carrying your child? Thornton had no good answer. I was afraid. I thought people would assume I was involved. Morrison leaned forward. Mr. Thornton, isn't it true that you killed Jennifer Hayes because she was pregnant with your child? Because she threatened everything you built, your marriage, your family, your reputation? No, I didn't kill her. I loved her. You loved her so much you strangled her in the woods and left her body like trash? I didn't do that. Morrison produced photos of Jennifer's ligature wounds, of her body in the ravine. Jennifer fought back against her attacker. We found skin cells under her fingernails. Those cells match your DNA, Mr. Thornton. How did your DNA get under Jennifer's fingernails if you didn't murder her? Thornton's face crumbled. He had no answer. On November 8th, 2024, after 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. The courtroom was packed. Michelle Hayes sat in the front row, holding a framed photo of Jennifer. Catherine Hayes had passed away in 2019, never knowing justice would come. Robert Hayes, now 86 and frail, sat beside Michelle. The foreman stood. In the case of the state of Indiana versus James Robert Thornton, we find the defendant guilty of murder. Gasps and sobs filled the courtroom. Guilty of kidnapping. Guilty of criminal confinement. Michelle Hayes collapsed into her father's arms. 36 years of grief pouring out. Robert Hayes, tears streaming down his weathered face, whispered, "We got him, Jenny. We finally got him." At his sentencing hearing 2 weeks later, Thornton was given the opportunity to speak. He stood, his hands shaking. "I didn't kill Jennifer Hayes," he said, his voice cracking. "I loved her. Someone else did this, and I'm being blamed because I made mistakes. I'm sorry for those mistakes, but I'm not a murderer." The judge and gallery sat in cold silence. Michelle Hayes then delivered a statement that reduced the courtroom to tears. "Jennifer was my little sister," she said, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "She was 22 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was 8 weeks away from starting college. She wanted to be a teacher. She wanted to help children. Instead, this man, this monster, decided his secrets were more important than her life. He decided that his marriage, his reputation, his convenience mattered more than my sister's dreams. For 36 years, I have fought for this day. My mother died without seeing justice. My father has waited half his life for answers. Our family has been haunted by questions, by nightmares, by the horror of not knowing. Today, we know. Today, science gave my sister a voice. And that voice said, 'Jim Thornton killed me.' I hope you spend every day for the rest of your life thinking about what you did. I hope you see Jennifer's face every time you close your eyes. And I hope you understand that you didn't just kill my sister. You killed her unborn child. 2 lives stolen because of your cowardice. You don't deserve mercy. You don't deserve forgiveness. You deserve exactly what you're about to get." Judge Thomas Mitchell imposed a maximum sentence. 65 years for murder, 40 years for kidnapping, 30 years for criminal confinement, to be served consecutively, 135 years total. At 70 years old, James Robert Thornton would die in prison. As bailiffs led him away, Thornton turned one last time toward the gallery, his face twisted with rage and self-pity. No one looked at him. Jennifer's family and the community had waited 36 years for this moment. They weren't giving him one more second of their attention. As of this recording in late 2024, Thornton has filed notice of appeal. His attorneys argue that the 36-year-old DNA evidence was too degraded to be reliable and that the genetic genealogy technique violates privacy rights. Legal experts give the appeal virtually no chance of success. The DNA science is sound, and genetic genealogy have been upheld in multiple court cases nationwide. For the Hayes family, the conviction brought a bittersweet closure. "I wish my mother had lived to see this," Michelle said after the sentencing. "She died believing Jennifer's killer would never be found, but I know she's watching from somewhere, finally at peace." Robert Hayes, speaking in a voice weakened by age and emotion, said simply, "My little girl can rest now." Bedford, Indiana, in 2024 is a different place than it was in 1988. The limestone industry has declined, taking with it much of the town's prosperity. But the community's commitment to justice has never wavered. Murphy's Bar closed in 2015, but a small memorial stands in the parking lot where Jennifer disappeared, a granite stone engraved with her name and the dates of her birth and death. Every year on October 14th, the community holds a candlelight vigil at the memorial. Dozens of people gather to remember Jennifer and to celebrate that justice finally came. The cold case unit led by Detective Sarah Walsh has become a model for similar units across the country. Jennifer's case proved that we should never give up on cold cases. Walsh said at a conference on genetic genealogy, "We have the tools now. We have the science. What we need is a commitment, the persistence to keep fighting for victims who can't fight for themselves." The Indiana State Police have committed to using genetic genealogy on 50 additional cold cases from the 1980s and 1990s. Jennifer's case opened the floodgates. Michelle Hayes, who spent 36 years fighting for her sister, has become a national advocate for cold case victims. She speaks at law enforcement conferences, works with forensic labs, and counsels families of unsolved murder victims. "Don't give up," she tells them. Technology is advancing every day. The case that seems impossible today might be solvable tomorrow. Keep fighting. Keep your loved one's name alive. Keep demanding justice. It took 36 years for Jennifer to get justice, but she got it. And if she can, so can your loved one. For Jennifer Lynn Hayes, a bright-eyed 22-year-old who loved teaching, who saved every penny for college, who was just months away from starting her dream, all was tragically stolen on a cold October night in 1988. She never got to attend Indiana University. She never became a teacher. She never got to live the life she'd worked so hard to build. But her story didn't end in those dark woods off State Road 37. Her story continued through her sister's relentless fight for justice. Her story continued through advances in DNA science that gave her a voice 3 decades after her death. Her story continued through a community that never forgot her. And her story reached its conclusion in a Lawrence County courtroom in November 2024, when 12 jurors said, "We believe Jennifer," and justice is served. The truth, buried for 36 years, finally came to light. The legal machinery has finished its work. The box in the evidence room can be closed for good. Jennifer Lynn Hayes and her unborn child can finally rest. Their memory serves as a reminder. Justice, however delayed, can still be found. Science can speak for the silenced. And persistence can overcome even decades of darkness. Thanks for being here and listening to Jennifer's story. If you or someone you know has information about an unsolved case, please reach out to your local law enforcement or cold case unit. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss when we shine a light on these forgotten cases. Stay safe, hold your loved ones close, and remember, DNA never forgets. This is Untold Cold Case Files, and we'll see you in the next one.